went through an incredible experience, a near death experience that you have written on, you have spoken on. You're part of a new movie. It is called After Death. And I want to just start for those who don't know your story. Really, this happened on a South American river. You almost lost your life. You essentially
I
did.
did lose my
You
life.
did lose your life, exactly. And which I know is so strange because here we are talking now, right? But you lost your
Yep.
life, you experienced something incredible. Talk first, before we get into the heaven experience, talk about the accident and what happened.
Well, in a nutshell, I mean, obviously, we don't have enough time to really go into it, but my husband and I are avid kayakers. We've kayaked for decades all around the country, internationally. And so this is something we do. This isn't a crazy kind of thing. But friends of ours are professional boaters and run trips to Chile every year during our winter and their summer. And so when my youngest son was finally old enough to let us leave without our kids, we decided to go down there for my husband's birthday. And we had a wonderful time. We paddled all these beautiful rivers and had a great time. And what was going to be our final day of paddling anyway, we decided to paddle a river that's well known for its waterfalls or its drops. And I'm not talking about Niagara Falls, but 10 to 15 feet, which are exhilarating and challenging, but certainly well within our skill set. And that day, actually, my husband did not go on the river with us. He woke up for the first and only time in his life with back pain. So he dropped us off, and then he was going to pick us up at the end. And so I went on the river with, again, these friends of ours that are professional boaters and a few other American clients. And when we came to the first more significant drop, another one of the clients sort of bobbled her way past me and kind of blocked the entrance to the channel we had selected to go over. And so my only option was to veer over and go over the main part of the waterfall, which is what I did. And when I crested it, I could see the bottom and see tremendous turbulence and flow. And, I knew it wasn't going to be pretty. But what I assumed would happen would be that I would hit the bottom and flip upside down and have to come out of my boat and kind of get tumbled around a little bit and then sort of spit out downstream, which is not a fun experience, but it is part of boating occasionally, and that's fine. But what happened instead is something I could never have dreamed up. I have to tell you that I had never actually thought about death before. In my medical practice and in my surgical training, I had certainly dealt with death, meaning death of patients, that sort of a thing. But at that point in my life, I had not personally lost anyone. I had not lost a grandparent or a parent or a sibling or a friend. I mean, I didn't know anything about death. And so, like most people, I think, I never thought about death until I had to. I had never thought about what would happen when I died. If someone had asked me, I'm sure I would have said, well, I think there's something more. I hope there's something more. I don't know. It's sort of this abstract concept that you say, well, I'll think about that someday, not this day. but
Yeah.
but I hit the bottom and the front of my boat became pinned or stuck in the rocks and the underwater features. And the boat and I were immediately submerged under 8 to 10 feet of water. And I am a spine surgeon, so I am very calm in high stress situations. And I didn't panic. People always ask, oh my gosh, did you panic? And no, I didn't panic. I set about trying to free me or free the boat, one of the two. But the weight of the water and the force of the current was too great for me to do anything. And I thought about my options, which of course were very few. And I realized that I would probably die. And it would be very easy for you or anyone who's listening to assume that, oh, a peace came over me and, oh, I gave in. I don't have the words to explain this so that you would actually understand it, but I made a very active choice and asked that God's will be done, regardless of what that meant. And it seems like it would be a really passive thing, but it was a really active choice. And I really did have a choice. I could either choose God's will or fight it. And either way, I was going to die. I guess it didn't really matter. But the moment I asked that, I was immediately overcome with this very physical sensation of being held and comforted and reassured that everything would be fine. My husband,
even as you're underwater, drowning.
No, I was underwater for sure. Yeah. This all happened underwater.
Wow.
And I was being held by Christ, which, it took me a long time to actually say that out loud, because like probably everyone, I mean, even though we talk about not having to earn God's love or work for it, in our hearts, we still believe that, we're not good enough. Like, I'm, why me? I mean, I'm nobody. And that's really one of the first really beautiful things I think about my experience, because it really is true. I mean, we are individually so completely known and so purely loved. We don't have to earn that. I mean, it's hard to accept that for us. I mean, but it's true.
And so you're in this moment. You know in that moment, I'm going to die. There's no way out of this, and you feel that sensation that overtakes you. What then? Once your eyes go black, once it happens, right?
They never went black.
They never went black. So you never had, there was no transition moment. It just flowed right.
For me personally, I never felt alive and then dead, conscious and then unconscious. I felt conscious and then more conscious.
Wow.
Alive and then more alive. No, I never felt, I never felt dead,
Yeah, there was no gap moment.
No, not for me. And I will tell you that I'm very pragmatic and sort of concrete thinking. And God's time is different. The spiritual world's time is different. And there was definitely a shift in time, dimension. I'm not quite sure what the metaphysical words would be, but I could experience all of eternity in every moment. And so I could be held by Christ and be reassured and taken through this life review and all these things. But at the same time, I was still me. I mean, perhaps my best me, but I was still me. And I had this little thought balloon off to the side thinking, wow, this is really strange. Wow.
Did you know it was the afterlife? I mean, did you know in those moments?
At this point, I was thinking like, this must be a hallucination. I must be hypoxic. And so I would do self-assessment exams. I'd say, okay, wait a minute now. I must have an air pocket because I'm very good with time. I knew I'd been underwater too long to still be alive. So I thought, okay, I have an air pocket. So I would think about, okay, take a breath. Do you feel air? And I'd say, no, I feel like a manta ray. I feel like an ocean creature. I felt glorious, actually. And it was water, but I could still feel the plastic of my boat. I could feel the weight of the water. I could feel the current slowly pulling my body out of the boat. I could feel my legs breaking as that happened. I mean, I could feel all these things with no pain, I might add. But at the same time, I could feel this intensity and purity of love and Christ's holding me and taking me through this life review and learning everything he taught me there. And then my spirit left my body. And I mean, it's truly a spirit. We leave. I mean, we all have these bodies here because that's part of this experience. But no, the real me, the essence, the spirit, the soul, whatever you want to call it, I don't care. I rose up and out of the river and just felt glorious is just not even the right word, but felt so glorious in this incredible lightness of being. And once I was above the river, it was like Jesus kind of like, I don't know, this sounds corny to say, but he just kind of released me to the heavens. And then I was greeted by this group again of, I don't know what, people, spirits, beings. Again, those words mean different things to different people. So I don't know what to call them, but I knew that they were people who had known me and loved me as long as I have existed. I knew that they were all people who were important in my life story. I didn't personally recognize them because, as I said, I didn't know anyone who had died. But let's say maybe it was a great grandparent who died before I was born, who knew me, knew of my existence, but I didn't know them.
Someone
So
tied to you, but you didn't know, right? So that's
yeah,
really interesting.
yeah, no, and I absolutely know that the next time, unfortunately, there are plenty of people who will be there to greet me that I will recognize and I will know. And the beautiful thing is that, when sometimes people say, well, I don't want to be reconnected with my father because he was a jerk and I hate him and I never want to see him again. But one of the incredible things is that when we are reunited with people, it is with an absolute understanding of the history, the backstory, what the purpose of it all was. And we're reunited with an absolute purity of love. And so even people who you didn't like here on earth, I mean, it's purity of love. I'm convinced that where love is present, and specifically where God's love is present, there's just no room for any of those destructive emotions. It's sort of like, light and darkness. I mean, all you have to have is a little tiny bit of light, and darkness can't exist because darkness isn't actually real. We talk about it, but it's not real. It's just the absence of light. And I'm convinced that all the destructive emotions that we feel, it's just an absence of love.
Well, and you think about this experience that you have, and you've died in the water, you've gone to heaven, you're experiencing this, and you obviously come back because here we are doing this interview right now.
I got kicked out.
You got kicked out. What was it like for you to wake up from this, right? And I know I'm oversimplifying the journey you were on, but to wake up from this and realize that was not a hallucination, that was something you really experienced.
Yeah, well, it was very difficult. And most people who come back from a near-death or after-death experience have a period of time. Some people it's short, some people it's longer, but a period of time of really a couple things. First of all, disbelief that they're back, and really depression. And then you sort of struggle with, okay, well, what does it all mean? Because having a near-death or after-death experience, or even any other really profound spiritual experience, is definitely a mixed bag. It's beautiful and wonderful and awesome, but it brings with it a real heaviness and weight of responsibility. And okay, now what do you do with it? And it definitely sets you apart. It's a very isolating sort of experience.
Well, especially for somebody like you. I mean, you're a doctor, you're a person of science, right? And you were somebody who hadn't thought a lot about these things before, and suddenly, how did that part of this change? Like, how did this experience change your faith walk? Let's go there, because you have a very different view now than you did then.
Yeah. I mean, I would have claimed ahead of time to be a Christian, but really, now when I look at it, it's like most people in this country and perhaps worldwide. I don't know. It's, it's kind of a cultural Christian. Like, okay, that's just kind of what I was. I happened to be born in the Midwest and we went to church. But that's not really being a Christian. That's a cultural Christian. You can be a cultural anything.
Right.
But I would say that currently, without any doubt, first of all, my number one identity is that I am a beloved child of God, period. Everything is secondary to that. I mean, believe me, I love being a wife. I love being a mother. All those two jobs are critically important to me. But the only thing that truly, truly matters is that I am a beloved child of God. And so my experience radically transformed my understanding of life and of death. It radically changed my understanding of what it means to be here. I mean, being on earth, life is this incredible opportunity and incredible adventure. And we're not meant to be here and just waste it away, or be here and just talk all the time about, oh, I can hardly wait to get back to heaven. I mean, that's like going to Europe and sitting in your hotel room wishing that you were back in your hotel room, in your hometown. Nobody would do that. I mean, if you go on a vacation, you go out and you experience it because you learn things differently. You experience, even if it's doing the same thing, you do it differently, and you have different things that force you to grow because it forces you out of your comfort zone. But for me, I had the other issue of coming back, because when I was sent back, I was given basically a laundry list of things I still had to do. And you may or may not remember, I was told about the coming and unexpected death of my oldest son. And at the time, he was only 9 and he was healthy as a clam. Actually, I don't know if clams are healthy, but he was healthy.
I do remember that about your story.
Yeah. For me, I came back, and not only because I'm a scientist, but because of that, I spent many, many months trying very hard to come up with an alternative explanation. I didn't want this experience. I didn't want it to be real. I didn't want anything to do with it, actually. So for me, it was sort of this even more intense experience of just thinking, like, come on, like, what's the deal here? why am I stuck with this? And nothing on this list was anything that I wanted to do or felt qualified to do. Everything. And that's kind of the way God calls us, right? You're never asked to do something that you feel like, oh, nice, that would be great. You're called to do something that pushes you out of your comfort zone, because it's only then that you truly identify and discover your gifts, your talents, your ability to glorify God and serve God.
Well, we have just under 2 minutes here, and I could talk to you for 4 hours because your story is so fascinating. So we're condensing it down here, but I want to ask, because you're in After Death now, which is a new film that hits on October 27th, and you get to tell your story once again, and it's very interesting and compelling the way this film is put together. What are you hoping people take away from After Death?
I am so hoping that people see the film and bring their friends, even friends who are not faith-based, because we're all going to die. And this film does a really, really good job of making you think. I hope that people leave this film feeling challenged in their own assumptions about what death means and what happens afterward. Because I'm absolutely convinced that if you get to the point where you accept that there really is life after death, then all of a sudden it propels you down this pathway of discovering meaning, purpose, and joy, which is the life I believe we're meant to live.
Dr. Mary Neal, I so appreciate that. That is a great place for us to close. The film is After Death, and it hits theaters on October 27th. Thanks for your time today.
Oh, thank you so much.